There are true stories often told in the deep voices of those who have lived through much. I, at 78 years old, looking back on a life of ups and downs, see myself as a traveler who has walked many winding paths of fate. Time, an invisible yet strangely heavy thing, has taught me that the deepest wounds can sometimes bring the most precious gifts. Life is a series of fleeting moments whose value we rarely recognize while we're living them. Only when we look back, through the mist of time, do we begin to see the lessons hidden in every challenge. I've learned that the pain of loss can turn a person into a hardened, lonely stone. But it is that same pain that can open doors we never expected. In my youth, I thought I understood love. I thought I understood family. But the true story I'm about to tell taught me otherwise, that family isn't always defined by blood, and love sometimes comes from the places we least expect. This is the story of a bitter man, a girl who lost everything, and how fate wove their lives into an unexpectedly colorful tapestry. Today, at 78, I look back and barely recognize the man I was. It's been 13 years since all this happened. I was 65 when my life changed completely, to be honest, more bitter than a green lemon. I was never much for talk, not even when I was younger, but after my wife Elaine Whitfield passed away, I got even worse. It's been 16 long years since she departed. 16 years without her by my side. She was the foundation of everything. The house without her seemed just a pile of empty walls, and when that damned cancer appeared, creeping like a venomous snake, I still thought I could manage. Elaine Whitfield started feeling the pains about 2 years before she passed. At first they were just discomforts, nothing that seemed serious, but the pains only worsened, and when we took her to the doctor, the sentence came dryly: advanced pancreatic cancer. Those words destroyed everything. We spent an entire year going from one hospital to another, trying one treatment here, another there, spending what we had and what we didn't have. I stayed by her side until the end. I saw my strong and vibrant wife wither away in bed like a plant without water. I held her hand and said that everything would be all right, even knowing it wouldn't. But cancer gives no respite, and when she closed her eyes for the last time on a bitter January night, I knew that things would never be the same again. I wandered around the house like a ghost, trying to find a reason to continue. My sons, Caleb, Wesley, and Pedro, stayed around for a while, but I wasn't easy to live with. Caleb Whitfield, the eldest, was in his early 30s at the time, but his head had gone astray long before. He got involved with the wrong people, started drinking too much, getting into gambling. I tried to talk to him, I argued, but nothing worked, and when his mother died, he collapsed completely. He disappeared about 6 months later, took what he had, left a note saying he was going to try his luck in another city, and never came back. Not a letter, not a call, nothing. My third son, Pedro, was different from both his brothers, quieter, more reserved, but with a gentle heart. He moved to the city around the same time as Wesley, taking a job at the lumber mill. We'd see him every few months when he'd come by with small gifts and stories from town. After Elaine passed, his visits became less frequent, and eventually they stopped altogether. I hadn't heard from him in years, and that silence weighed on me every day. I still heard people saying they had seen him around, poorly dressed, but I could never confirm it. It turned out 5 years ago he was found to have been murdered because of debts with a loan shark. Wesley Whitfield, the youngest, was always a good boy. He worked from an early age in the city, never gave a moment's trouble, and when he became an adult, he managed to save some money. He was a centered young man, always wanting to do the right thing. It didn't take long for him to buy a modest little house in the center and marry a good woman, Naomi Whitfield, whom he met at work. They were building a peaceful life, but then when his mother got sick, he started coming more and more to the homestead, worried about me and about her. He spent the weekends here and then went back to the city, trying to balance everything, But when the disease advanced, he couldn't keep up with this back and forth. His wife started complaining, saying she couldn't take that coming and going anymore, and he, divided, ended up staying here more than there. He abandoned his own life to try to help me hold things together. Even afterward, when his mother passed away, he kept insisting, wanting me to go live in the city, to sell the homestead, and start over. But I, stubborn as I am, said I would never leave here. Time passed, and without me realizing it, his marriage started to fall apart. His wife wanted her husband's presence. She was pregnant. Things got ugly, and he started to get more and more nervous. Only I, instead of understanding, started to argue even more. It was around this time that the relationship between us soured like old milk. Each visit of his was an argument. But when Piper Whitfield, my little princess, was born, we grew closer again. I would go to his house, bring little gifts for my first granddaughter, spoiling that lovely little thing. It was so good after everything I had been through. She was a light in my life. Soon Naomi Whitfield was pregnant again, and Milo Whitfield was born, another light in our lives. But Wesley Whitfield wouldn't settle down. He kept tormenting me, wanting me to sell the homestead, to go live with them in the city. But how could I abandon the place where I built my life, where every corner held a memory of my Elaine Whitfield, where I raised my sons, where I planted every tree? No, I couldn't do that. It was asking too much of this old heart. Until the day I will never forget arrived. The fight was the worst of all. The words came out like poison. I saw Wesley Whitfield's face contorted with rage, his fists clenched. It was then that he said something that chilled me to the bone. "I'm leaving, Dad, for good. I'm going to live my life. I won't bother you anymore." I stood paralyzed while he continued. I saw my son, and when he turned to leave, our eyes met. There was something in his gaze, a last chance, perhaps, but in my idiotic pride I could only say, "Go then, and don't look back." Wesley Whitfield didn't answer. He just turned his back and left. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house. The following days were a torment. The absence of him and the children was almost physical. I wandered around the house, feeling the weight of the silence. At night, lying in bed, I thought of ways to apologize, but when dawn broke, my stubborn pride prevented me from doing anything. And so time went by, days, weeks, months. After they left, I withdrew completely. I stopped going to the cemetery, closed myself off in the house, and spoke only when absolutely necessary. The town saw me as nothing more than a bitter old man, and frankly, that suited me just fine. If someone passed by me, they practically crossed the street to the other side. I know that the town talked about me behind my back. "There goes the grumpy old man." That's what they must have said. But you know what? I didn't even care. I didn't need anyone. People are too complicated, and after a while you get tired of trying to understand. I spent my days like that, in my corner, between the garden and the woodshed. The truth is, I preferred the company of the chickens to gossipy people. They at least didn't keep asking about my life. But then, one fine day, people started to notice that I was acting differently. All they had to do was set foot on the path to the woodshed, and I was already wearing a smile that hadn't been seen in years. People gossiped, looked sideways, made faces of astonishment because, after all, what on earth was a grumpy old man who never smiled doing in the woodshed to come out so satisfied? Well, as I was saying, it was a secret I kept only to myself at that time. I wasn't a man to have any joy. Not even a pet kept me company, much less people. But for some reason, every time I left the woodshed, my face, the same wrinkled and closed face like an iron door, broke into an involuntary smile. And look, it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't that I forgot to be bitter for an instant. It didn't take long for the neighbors to start noticing. The gossip spread faster than ticks on a dog, a whisper here, a sideways glance there, until they started to invent stories. They said I had a secret girlfriend hidden inside. Seriously? At 65, I could barely take care of myself, let alone have a woman around. Others, more exaggerated, swore that I had found a gold mine. What nonsense. But I didn't care. I didn't let them talk. It was easier to let people think what they wanted than to tell the truth. I had something much more precious in the woodshed, something that, if anyone knew, would change everything. Only I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. And the worst part is that there were people willing to find out by force. Among them, the worst of all, Mrs. Gladys Pemberton, the biggest blabbermouth I've ever known. A small, frail woman, but with a temper to envy any politician. If there was a rumor, you could bet it was she who started it. And so, when she started to notice that I was different, she decided it was time to stick her nose where it didn't belong. One day, after I came back from the fair, there she was, planted in my gate like a plague. The sun hadn't even set yet, and she was already there, with her arms crossed and her sour face waiting to interrogate me. I hadn't even gotten out of the car when she started. "So, Hank Whitfield, what are you hiding in the woodshed?" I sighed deeply, trying not to lose my patience. Mrs. Gladys Pemberton wasn't a woman to be easily sent away. She was like weeds, sprouting even in the asphalt. But I was never one to bow my head to anyone, so I answered with the same bad mood as always. "And what's it to you, Gladys Pemberton? Go mind your own business and leave me alone." She didn't back down, of course. Mrs. Gladys Pemberton was practically sticking her finger in my nose. "Ah, so there's something hidden, isn't there? Nobody smiles like that for nothing, Hank Whitfield. I know people who laugh for less. But you must have found some treasure chest in there, or you're getting into something wrong." "Go to hell, woman," was all I could manage to say before slamming the door in her face and going straight to the woodshed, my heart pounding in my chest. Well, I'll tell you the reason for my smiles. It was much simpler and, at the same time, more complicated than anyone in that town could imagine. There was no treasure, no contraband, and much less a woman. What I was hiding inside was a scared little girl who had nowhere to go. If I told, they would think I was crazy. They would want to take her away. That's all I could think, and that's why I hardened with Mrs. Gladys Pemberton. She had a nose like a hunting dog, and if I gave her a tiny opening, she would end up discovering everything. That night, the rain was falling hard, as if the sky wanted to wash away all the dirt from the world. I was going back to the woodshed to store some tools when I saw a small shadow moving near the door. At first I thought it was some animal looking for shelter, but when I got closer, my heart almost stopped. It was a girl, no more than 11 or 12 years old, all huddled up and trembling like a green twig. I opened the door of the woodshed in an instant and signaled for her to come in. The poor thing hesitated, but the cold and the rain must have spoken louder. As soon as she entered, I closed the door behind us. In the dim light of an old lantern, I could see her state better. My God, she looked like a little bird that had fallen from the nest and rolled in the mud. Her clothes were all dirty and torn, her hair was a paste stuck to her forehead, and you could count her ribs, she was so thin. "Girl," I said, trying not to scare her, "what are you doing here alone on a night like this?" But she stayed silent, only looking at me with those big, scared eyes. It was as if I were looking at myself many years ago, when I also had nothing and no one in the world. After all, I was abandoned in an orphanage as a baby, and my parents, Marcia and Joaquim, adopted me. I was well raised by them, but I obviously wasn't following anything they had taught me. If the two of them were alive, they would certainly be disappointed with my actions. They always told me about the importance of family, of not letting pride speak louder than love, and what was I doing? Exactly the opposite. I was throwing away everything I learned from them, all the love they gave me. If they could see me now, they would probably shake their heads sadly to see the son they raised with so much affection acting this way. I remembered that I had brought a piece of bread in case I found an animal to feed. I took it out of my pocket, already a little damp from the rain, but still good to eat. I offered it, extending the bread to her. "You must be hungry, aren't you?" The girl looked at the bread as if it were gold, but didn't move. So I broke off a little piece and ate it in front of her to show that there was no danger. Only then did she take the bread slowly, as if she thought I would change my mind and take it from her. She ate it all in an instant, and you could see that it had been a while since she had put anything in her mouth. After a little while, she looked at me again and whispered so softly that I almost didn't hear her. "Willow Haynes," was the only thing she said that night, and since then she hasn't said anything else. Willow Haynes. Such a beautiful name for such a suffering creature. I didn't know where she came from or what had happened, but one thing I knew. That girl was alone in the world and needed help. I did what my heart told me and decided to hide her right there in the woodshed. I arranged a corner with some bales of hay, took a blanket, and let her settle in. That first night, she stayed huddled in a corner, without taking her eyes off me. It seemed she was waiting for me to change my mind and throw her out on the street at any moment, but I wasn't going to do that. I couldn't. That girl had appeared in my life for some reason, and I was going to take care of her, even knowing I was getting into a hell of a mess. Since that day, every time I entered the woodshed, I found those eyes observing me, attentive and scared, and with each passing day I became more attached to her. Willow Haynes never asked for anything, never complained. It was just silence and fear. But I understood that silence. It was the same silence of someone who has seen more pain than they should in life. One night, when the moon was well hidden and the neighbors had already retired, I took Willow Haynes secretly to my house so she could take a bath. I did everything very carefully, looking in all directions as if I were a thief in my own house. After the bath, she looked different, but the fear in her eyes remained the same. I explained to her with all the patience in the world that she needed to stay hidden in the woodshed. "The neighbors can't see you, honey," I said. "If they find you here, they'll ask questions that I can't answer, and you'll have to leave." And so the days went by, 17 to be exact. I knew I was playing with fire, hiding a girl in a place like that. In a small town like ours, where everyone keeps an eye on everything, it was a matter of time until someone found out. But I couldn't abandon her, not now. My plan, if you can call this whole madness a plan, was to wait. To wait for the girl to gather courage and tell me what on earth had happened to her. Only then could I think about how to really help. But the girl was more closed than an oyster. She must have gone through something terrible, a great trauma, perhaps, to be that way, mute and scared like a cornered animal. Every time I brought food or clean clothes to the woodshed, my heart beat fast, fearing that some nosy neighbor would see me, but the fear of being discovered was less than the desire to protect that child. I'm not a man to coddle anyone, but with her, well, with her it was different. I was giving time to time. If she was traumatized, as I suspected, there was no use in forcing it. But was it difficult? Ah, it was. I, a grumpy old man accustomed to solitude, suddenly finding myself responsible for a child. The problem is that the more I tried to do things discreetly, the more attention I attracted. If I took a step out of place, there were someone's eyes noticing, and in those last weeks, the whispers turned into shouts. Everyone talked, everyone wanted to know, and Mrs. Gladys Pemberton led the chorus. A woman like her, with that bossy way, would never accept a no for an answer. That day, she must have told the whole town, because, in the late afternoon, when I went out to fetch water from the well, I saw a bunch of curious people on the road, pretending they were just passing by. I didn't swallow that. Mrs. Gladys Pemberton spread that I had something dangerous in the woodshed, that it was better for the town to get together and put an end to my suspicious activity. Suspicious activity? I wish. All I had was a scared little girl whom I was hiding because I knew that, if it weren't for me, no one else would take care of her. I did what I could to hold the situation. I locked the woodshed earlier and went back home, but even so, I couldn't settle down. Night fell slowly, and I just kept looking out the window, waiting for what I knew would come. They would find a way to get in, and I was right. It wasn't even midnight when I heard the sound of the wood of the gate creaking. I ran to the porch, and from there I saw the lanterns flickering in the dark, the silhouette of a group walking in my direction, Mrs. Gladys Pemberton in front, with that way of someone who rules the world. They were going to break the padlock. I knew, and I couldn't do anything. I went down the stairs 2 steps at a time, my heart beating so hard that I thought it would explode. I ran through the yard and arrived there when they were starting to push the door. I shouted for them to stop, to go away, but no one heard me. It's that kind of situation where the more you try to prevent, the more they are sure you are hiding something serious. When the padlock fell and the door opened, I knew it was over. The lanterns illuminated the interior of the woodshed, and everyone fell silent. In the corner, behind a pile of hay, there was Willow Haynes's very scared face. The expression in her eyes when she saw that crowd tore me to pieces. She tried to hide, but there was no way anymore. Mrs. Gladys Pemberton took a step forward and almost stumbled, surprised. For the first time she closed that mouth, and that, coming from Mrs. Gladys Pemberton, was a miracle. For a second, no one said anything. The lanterns pointed at Willow Haynes and the wide eyes of the people telling me what I already knew. They didn't expect that. I could only think about how to explain without seeming like I was a madman. Before I could open my mouth, Mrs. Gladys Pemberton turned to me with a face I will never forget. Her lips trembled as if she had chewed on a bitter creature. Then she started to scream. She screamed as if I were harming the girl, accusing me. She screamed, pointing that crooked finger at me. "I'm calling the police right now." Everyone there looking at me as if I were the worst story in the world. Willow Haynes shrank even more, trembling as if each word were a slap. There was no way out. They called the police, and I, at the height of my despair, just wanted her not to be taken from me. When the police cars arrived, it was as if hell had descended there in my yard. Sirens on, lights flashing, people crowding to see. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was racing, and I felt my throat dry as if I had swallowed sand. Sheriff Colton Reeves came down first, that imposing figure with the starched uniform and the hard face of someone who has seen everything. He looked at me, and then at the little girl who was shrinking in the back of the woodshed. He took 2 steps in my direction, and without beating around the bush, he started to speak, wanting to know who she was, where she had come from, and especially why on earth I was hiding a child in my woodshed. And I, who was never good at talking, found myself there in the middle of all those people, trying to explain the unexplainable. I said that I found her alone wandering around and that I just wanted to protect her, but he didn't seem interested in my excuses. Mrs. Gladys Pemberton, of course, started to scream again, saying that I must be lying, that nobody would hide a child like that for no reason. I wanted to answer, wanted to tell her to go to hell, but my voice failed. All I could do was stand there watching the sheriff turn to Willow Haynes. He tried to talk to her slowly, asking her name and where she was from, but Willow Haynes was terrified. Her eyes jumped, full of tears, as she tried to move away as much as she could, as if she wanted to open a portal in the wall of the woodshed. The sheriff sighed, shook his head, and then gave the order I feared most. "We're taking her to the county sheriff's station," he said. "I want to know what this poor girl is going through in your hands." My world fell at that moment. I ran in his direction, begged him to listen to me. I shouted that they couldn't do that she needed me. But all I managed to do was to be pushed back. They grabbed Willow Haynes as if she were a pig for slaughter, tossed over the shoulders of the policeman. She started to cry and scream loudly when she realized they were taking her away. I stood there, unable to do anything, only seeing my only reason to live being taken. But things didn't stop there. No sooner had they put Willow Haynes in the police car than one of the officers turned to me. "You will have to come with us too," he said dryly as straw. I didn't even have time to protest. They handcuffed me right there in front of everyone, as if I were any bandit. The car doors closed, and in seconds we were leaving, me in the backseat of a patrol car, Willow Haynes in another. I saw the lights of the houses of Pinecrest Valley fading behind. Now tell me something. Would you have sheltered a girl in the conditions that Willow Haynes was in? Or do you think I rushed things by not taking her to the police immediately? I'd like to know your opinion. At the county sheriff's station, they threw me into a small, stuffy room. Hours passed with policemen coming in and out, asking questions, wanting answers that I barely knew how to give. "You don't understand," I repeated with a voice hoarse from talking so much. "She needed help. I couldn't leave her on the street." But they wanted more. Wanted to know where she came from, who else was involved. At first, I didn't quite understand what they were trying to say, but little by little it dawned on me. They insinuated that I was part of some bigger scheme, that the girl was kidnapped, and I was just hiding her until someone paid the ransom. "For the love of God!" I shouted when I finally understood. "You think I'm a crook? A bandit?" The sheriff looked at me. "Hank Whitfield, you have to understand our position. A girl found hidden on your property, clearly traumatized. That's not something you see every day." I almost laughed nervously. I, an old man who barely left home, was now suspected of being part of a gang of kidnappers. If it weren't so serious, it would even be funny. "Look here," I said, trying to stay calm. "I just wanted to help that girl. She appeared out of nowhere, all beat up and scared. What did you want me to do? Throw her on the street?" The interrogation seemed to have no end. There was no lawyer. There was no one on my side. It was just me, God, and that officer who seemed determined to make me confess something I didn't do. The same questions in different ways. I felt more and more lost and desperate. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the officer stood up. "Well, Hank Whitfield, you will be detained while we investigate further. You have the right to a lawyer. If you can't afford one, the state will provide a public defender for your case." That night, they took me to a cell in the detention center. It was a cold place full of people I didn't even want to look in the eyes. Lying on a hard bed that looked more like a plank, I could only think about Willow Haynes. Where would she be? Would she be okay? And how was I going to prove that my intentions were good? I knew that at some point a lawyer would appear to help me. But until then, I was alone. I could very well have called my son Wesley Whitfield, but I didn't want him to get involved in this story. After all, it would be one more reason for him to say that I couldn't live alone. After 3 days in that county sheriff's station that seemed like an eternity, being treated like a bandit, they finally took me before a judge. I was nervous, but determined to tell the truth, however crazy it seemed. The judge looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and weariness, listened to my story, asked a few questions, then turned to the prosecutor and my lawyer, a young man that the state had arranged for me, and started to say a bunch of things that I barely understood. In the end, to my surprise, the judge decided to release me. "You are free to go home," he said, "but you will have to appear at the courthouse every week and cannot leave the town or attempt contact with the girl while the investigation continues." I left the county sheriff's station with a mixture of relief and worry. I was free, that's true, but what about Willow Haynes? Where would she be? How would she be? All that was left for me was to pray that the truth would appear, that Willow Haynes would be safe, and that somehow all this would make sense in the end. In the days that came after, the house seemed even emptier. The sound of the rooster crowing, the chickens scratching in the yard, everything seemed muffled, lifeless. I woke up early, but I no longer had the energy to go to the woodshed. I tried to work, to till the land, but my head wouldn't leave that moment. Willow Haynes's crying, the sound of the car door closing. I needed to see her. But Sheriff Colton Reeves was clear when he said that I couldn't try to contact the girl while the investigation continued. Until one morning, when I was almost giving up hope, a car stopped in front of my house. It was Sheriff Colton Reeves again, but he wasn't alone. Beside him, getting out slowly with curious little eyes and lowered head, was Willow Haynes. I felt my heart leap, but I didn't move. I was there in the yard with my broom in hand, standing still in disbelief. The sheriff looked at me as if assessing a piece of merchandise, and then said that we needed to talk. I approached slowly, afraid that if I moved too fast they would leave again. Then he spoke, scratching his head, seeming as lost as I was in this whole story. "Look, Hank Whitfield," he said, sighing deeply. Considering Willow Haynes's situation, without documents, without family, without anything that says where this girl sprouted from. The girl doesn't want to say anything about her life, but insists that she wants to stay with you. The Harmony House talked to the judge, who authorized her to stay here for now, considering the special circumstances. At that moment, Willow Haynes, who was quietly mumbling, raised her head. Her eyes, big like two saucers, filled with water. "I want to stay with Hank Whitfield," she said, her voice barely audible. That was all she said. She came walking slowly and hugged me. The officer looked at her, then at me, and shrugged. "For now, Hank Whitfield, it seems you've gained a shadow. She'll stay here with you, but we'll be watching." He glared at me sternly as a stone. "It's temporary, understand? Tomorrow the wind can change direction." I felt myself feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. It was a start, but far from the end of this crazy story. I didn't even hear what he said afterward. The only thing I understood is that Willow Haynes could stay only for now, but she was there, and that was what mattered. I bent down to be at her level and saw the shadow of a smile on the face I thought I would never see again. Then the sheriff made a final warning. I was being monitored, and any slip-up would mean the end. If I really wanted to stay with her, I would need to prove that I was capable of taking care of Willow Haynes. When he left, all I could do was take her hand and guide her inside. The house, which before seemed dead, suddenly seemed to come alive again. It wasn't a happy ending, not by a long shot, but it was more than I had expected since that night when everything collapsed. And for Willow Haynes, I was going to fight until the last strand of hair that still remained on me. It was decided that she would no longer be hidden in the woodshed. Now it was for real. Willow Haynes was going to live inside the house, in the room that had previously been closed and full of dust. I spent the afternoon arranging everything as best I could, taking out the old things that had been there since my wife passed away. I put in a good mattress, some blankets, and did my best to make the place minimally decent. It wasn't a mansion, but it was better than that dark corner in the woodshed. When she entered the room for the first time, she still seemed somewhat in disbelief, standing there looking around as if she expected someone to appear and send her away again. I told her that that space was now hers, and that she didn't need to hide anymore. It was difficult at first because everything there brought back memories to me. The house was large, designed for a family that I once had, but now it was just me and Willow Haynes. She still didn't have the confidence to circulate through all the rooms, but little by little she was getting used to it. What she really liked was watching cartoons and soap operas. We watched them together. That night, for the first time, I saw her sleep without shrinking like a scared animal. Every now and then, she still woke up startled, calling for someone who only existed in her nightmares. But I was there to calm her. The truth is that the house, which before seemed like a tomb, came back to life. When I went to do the chores, I called her, taught her everything, the care for the small garden. I taught her to water the plants, and little by little she started to tell me more about who she was. It was on one of those afternoons that she, out of the blue, told me that she remembered a distant city full of tall buildings. She spoke of a mother who had long hair and wore a yellow dress, but when she tried to go further, her voice trembled, and she fell silent. I knew that the memory brought more pain than comfort, so I never forced anything. The social worker Autumn Calloway started to visit us, always asking about these memories, trying to piece together how Willow Haynes had ended up there. It didn't take long for her to start to feel more comfortable. I started letting her play in the yard, and the people of the town, little by little, started to accept that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But for many, I was still a stubborn old man who didn't know what he was doing. The difference is that now Willow Haynes was no longer afraid of being seen. When someone passed by, she waved, even if it was a shy wave. That confidence filled me with a kind of joy that I hadn't felt in years. But as always, the tranquility didn't last long. One afternoon, while we were on the porch, I saw a different car approaching on the dirt road. It wasn't from the police or any neighbor. Willow Haynes, who was sitting on a bench next to me, went rigid. I noticed her gaze narrowing, her breathing getting faster, and in seconds she shrank as if she wanted to disappear. At that moment, something inside me already knew that this wasn't going to end well. The car stopped, and two men got out. They weren't from around there. You could tell by their clothes and the way they walked. One of them, older, wore thin-rimmed glasses and had gray hair. The other, a little younger, wore a tailored suit and seemed more concerned with adjusting his tie than with anything else. The older one took a step forward and introduced himself as Mr. Thaddeus Blackwood, a lawyer who, according to him, was there to discuss an important matter. He looked me up and down as if measuring every inch of the place where we were and asked for my name. But I was faster. I went straight to the point, my heart pounding in my chest. Who were they, and what did they want there? The fellow took a crumpled envelope out of his pocket and handed it to me with a cold look. He said it was a notification, but I knew it was more than a simple piece of paper. It was a sentence. As soon as I started reading, the ground seemed to disappear from under my feet. They knew everything. They had gone to the county sheriff's station, researched every detail, and with that, they managed to track down Willow Haynes's whereabouts. It was no coincidence that they were there, and when he started to speak, my spine chilled. Willow Haynes wasn't just a lost little girl. She had a story, a family. She was a rich kid, and damn, she had a brother. With each word, I felt the weight accumulating on my chest. Mr. Thaddeus Blackwood explained to me that her parents, Sterling and Bridget Haynes, were owners of Haynes Innovation, a software and AI app developer company, and had left a considerable fortune, known rich people who appear in the social columns. Me, as I didn't give a damn about news, was out of the loop. I didn't even watch CBS Evening News. The truth is that when Elaine Whitfield was alive, she and I watched it together. After she passed, it became something painful for me. Mr. Thaddeus Blackwood talking about wealth, everything changed. They left a party and never returned home. The car skidded on a curve and fell into a ravine. Her mother and father died in a car accident about 6 months before I found her outside, huddled like a little bird. The two of them died instantly. They told me that kind of tragedy that we see on the news and think, sad thing, but thank goodness it's not with us. Well, that's what took Willow Haynes's parents. Good people, they said, people who took good care of their children. Only fate doesn't choose, and when the time came, it left nothing but pain and a bunch of paperwork to be resolved. Archer Haynes, Willow Haynes's younger brother, was only 7 years old at the time and was with her at home, under the care of the nanny. Only then did I understand what she had lost. I imagined the scene, the two of them waking up in the morning, waiting for their parents to enter through the door, and instead of that, strangers came with harsh words and serious faces, saying that their parents wouldn't be coming back. They were torn from the only home they knew and thrown into Harmony House as if they were just numbers on a list. No close relative, no grandfather or grandmother to hold their hands and say that everything would be okay. Willow Haynes and Archer Haynes were thrown into Harmony House as if they were misplaced pieces. And you know, these Harmony Houses may even try to be welcoming, but the truth is that they are just a repository for people that no one else wanted. The lawyer paused, as if he was choosing his words. He said that Willow Haynes stayed there for a few months, leaving her and Archer Haynes together, trying to maintain some sense of family. But the girl I knew so well, was closing herself off with each passing day. She withdrew more and more, barely ate, didn't talk to anyone, and kept looking out the window as if she expected someone to come pick her up. Archer Haynes even adapted better, but she carried all the pain and responsibility on her shoulders. Suddenly, relatives started appearing who never showed their faces before. Fifth cousins she didn't even know, all people who said they were worried about her and her brother's well-being. When he said that, I already understood everything. What they really wanted, because mind you, it wasn't just the girl and her brother that were at stake. There was money from the inheritance, family shares, properties, lands, assets, and when money appears, the vultures also appear. And they were in a hurry, because when there's no one else to inherit, the money is in dispute. Mr. Thaddeus Blackwood continued. These relatives who never sent a letter or called while her parents were alive were now ready to fight for custody of the two, one here, another there, all people who said they wanted what was best for the children, but who deep down only wanted to get their hands on what was left. Willow Haynes realized that right away, intelligent, the little one, smarter than many big people, and that's why she didn't trust anyone. She stayed silent, observing, trying to understand what the play was. So, when one of these relatives appeared to say that he was going to take her, that he was going to resolve her and her brother's lives, Willow Haynes did what few would have the courage to do. She fled. The girl left Harmony House in the middle of the night with only the clothes on her body, without making noise, probably to gain time. Archer Haynes stayed. Certainly she carried the guilt for leaving him there alone, not that she had a choice. What option would an 11-year-old girl have? The poor thing must have been wandering the streets, hiding in alleys, asking for food here and there, always careful never to stay too long in the same place, because she knew that if they caught her, they would take her back to that nightmare. That's why, when I found her, she was already shattered, weak, and with more fear than courage. But even so, she didn't ask for help. She only accepted because I insisted. There was no other place to go, and that's how she ended up there in the woodshed on that rainy night. I didn't know any of this when I sheltered her. For me, she was just another lost soul that the world had spat out. But those two fellows who appeared with the envelope opened my eyes. He said that since she fled, Harmony House had turned into chaos. First they looked everywhere, but found nothing. So, when they gave up finding Willow Haynes, they started to have visits from lawyers, those with expensive suits and smooth talk, saying that they represented relatives, people who had never appeared before, but who now wanted to take the children to give them what their parents could no longer give. But I know well what that sweet talk is. Willow Haynes knew too, knew that if she went with one of those, she would end up trapped in a house where love didn't even pass through the door. And that's what she feared most, being thrown into a golden cage without ties and without roots. It was then that Mr. Landon Pierce, the younger of the lawyers, spoke up with a serious voice. Hank Whitfield, we need to make a quick decision. If we don't act soon, there's a real risk that Archer Haynes will be adopted by another family. Those words fell like a weight in my stomach. The idea of seeing that little boy, so small and innocent, being thrown from one side to the other as if he were a package, made me nauseous. I looked at Willow Haynes, who looked like a broken doll, her eyes full of fear and hope at the same time. It was at that moment that Mr. Thaddeus Blackwood looked directly at me. His voice was firm when he said, Archer Haynes is still at Harmony House, Hank Whitfield, but not for long. Mrs. Vivian and Mr. Dexter Haynes, distant uncles of the children, are moving heaven and earth to get custody of him. I felt the weight of those words. The situation was more urgent than I imagined. It wasn't just about Willow Haynes now, but also about her brother, who was in danger of being separated from her forever. The blood rushed to my head, distant uncles, people who never looked at them before. My God, Willow Haynes had fled to avoid that, and I felt obligated to help. When Mr. Thaddeus Blackwood handed over the paper with the decision, I already knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let them take her without a fight, because it wasn't just about Willow Haynes anymore. It was about little Archer Haynes, who was still waiting for his sister, and if I didn't do anything, they would separate the two forever. I made up my mind. I wanted the two of them for me. After all that confusion, I decided to call my son Wesley Whitfield. It had been a long time since we had spoken, and yes, I was desperate. I would need to swallow my pride and ask for help. Since that ugly fight because of the sale of the house, when I heard his voice on the other end of the line, I felt a joy that I didn't even know was stored inside me. We talked a little, I asked about the children, my grandchildren, how much I missed them. Certainly they had grown a lot. That's when Wesley Whitfield surprised me. He said that it was a coincidence that I had called at that very moment. He and his wife had decided to come visit me next weekend, whether I wanted them to or not. He said that he was upset after our fight, but that he had resolved to accept that the old man here didn't want to sell the house and that he was stubborn like a stalled donkey. He said that he wanted to talk to me personally, eye to eye, and that the children were bothering him and their mother to take them to their grandfather's house. I didn't know what to say. My son, the same one that I thought would never want to look at my face again, was coming to see me. I felt a lump in my throat, a mixture of relief and fear. Wasn't it enough that the other one had fallen into the world? It was then that the words came out without me even thinking about it. I apologized. I said that I had said more than I should have that day. His voice became softer on the other end, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders as well. While we were talking, my head was spinning. I thought about Willow Haynes, about everything that had happened in the last few days. I thought about telling Wesley Whitfield, but something held me back. What if he didn't understand? What if he thought I had done something crazy? No, better to wait. Let him see with his own eyes. So I decided to keep the secret. I didn't tell anything about Willow Haynes, about all that confusion. I decided that I was going to present her as a surprise when they arrived. Who knows, seeing that girl wouldn't soften my son's heart. When I hung up the phone, I already started thinking about what I was going to prepare for Sunday lunch. It had been a long time since I had had a visit at home, much less Wesley Whitfield and the children. The smell of Sunday food, that thing of family reunited, was stored in a corner of my memory, almost forgotten. I looked out the window, saw Willow Haynes playing in the yard on the swing that I made for her. I decided to call her and tell her the truth. Sitting next to me, I told everything from the beginning. I told about my complicated relationship with Wesley Whitfield, how we grew apart, about the fights and grudges that separated us. She listened to each word as if she were unraveling an ancient mystery. When I mentioned the grandchildren, I saw the sparkle in her eyes. She immediately got excited about the idea of meeting the children, smiled, and said that she would help to get everything ready. We spent the rest of the week in that expectation, arranging the house, thinking about what to do for lunch. And then the long-awaited day finally arrived. The sound of the car going up the dirt road made my heart jump in my chest. I asked Willow Haynes to stay inside the house. I wanted to prepare the ground before introducing her, to put things in the right place, but I was nervous like a boy on a first date. They had barely stopped when I saw the two children, Milo Whitfield and Piper Whitfield, jumping out and running in my direction. My God, how they had grown. Those two that I only remembered as little grains were now big, strong, full of life. When they hugged me, I felt my legs wobble. It was as if all the walls that I had built around me collapsed in an instant. Squeezes, laughter, and suddenly the tears came without warning, burning my eyes in a way that I couldn't hold back. I held each of them tightly, feeling the smell of childhood, of new life. I stood there hugging them as if they were a lost treasure, so many years away, so many moments that I missed. A real shame. Wesley Whitfield stood still for a while, observing from afar, that posture of his, somewhat rigid, trying not to show what he was feeling. When I approached, he made a comment with a smile on the corner of his mouth, the way he always did when he wanted to break the ice. "This tough old man crying, it's a pity you didn't bring a camera," he said. We laughed together, a laugh that wasn't just joking, but of relief. I pulled him into a tight hug, feeling the weight of time between us. The hug didn't bring back the lost years, but it brought hope for better days. Naomi Whitfield came right after. She was beautiful, even if a little different from what I remembered. Elegant, she always was. I greeted her with a smile, trying to ignore that heavy makeup she wore, something that I never liked. But who am I to say? I invited everyone to come in, trying not to let the anxiety that was gnawing at me inside show. When we entered the living room, there was Willow Haynes, sitting on the couch watching television quietly, her legs crossed as if she wanted to disappear. As soon as she heard the noise of so many people entering, she got up in a jump, her eyes wide with fright. She stood there like a bird caught in the middle of the nest, not knowing if she should run or stay. Wesley Whitfield stopped in the middle of the way, his face full of confusion. He looked at the girl and then at me. I saw the gears turning in his head, trying to piece things together, and then he spoke slowly, with a trembling voice of surprise. "Dad, this girl, is she Pedro's daughter?" His words hit me like a punch in the stomach. Pedro's daughter? No, that wasn't it at all. No, Pedro didn't come back. That's Willow Haynes, the girl who appeared here some time ago. She's not related to us. I knew he wouldn't understand right away, but I needed to make it clear she wasn't anyone's daughter that he knew. She was just a girl that destiny had thrown in my path, and somehow we ended up meeting, like someone finds a thread of hope. Wesley Whitfield frowned, clearly suspicious. Naomi Whitfield also didn't seem to know where to fit into that situation. The children, however, did what children do best. They broke the ice. Piper Whitfield, with the curiosity that only a child can have, took a step forward and extended her hand to Willow Haynes. "Hi, my name is Piper Whitfield. Do you want to play with me?" And that was it, simple like that. Willow Haynes, still somewhat apprehensive, took a step forward and shook the girl's hand. I saw the stiffness in her shoulders disappear a little. Little by little, the two started talking quietly, until Milo Whitfield said, "What a smell of good food. What did you make for lunch? I'm hungry," he said, turning his hand on his belly. Then Piper Whitfield pulled Willow Haynes by the hand, and they went to the kitchen. Wesley Whitfield, Naomi Whitfield, and I stood there, looking at each other with all the weight of the past between us. He sighed deeply, shook his head, and said with a half-smile, "Always doing things the hard way, huh, Dad?" I couldn't help but smile back. "I don't know how to do it any other way, son. I really don't." Look, it was time to open the game. There was no way to hide anything anymore. I decided to tell everything from the beginning. I spoke about Willow Haynes, about how she appeared here at home, all huddled and scared like a lost animal. I told about my fear of someone finding out, about the nights I spent awake, worried, and how I managed to take food to her without anyone seeing. Then, when I got to the part that I was arrested, Jesus Christ, you needed to see Wesley Whitfield's face. His eyes almost jumped out. "How is it, Dad? You were arrested and didn't say anything to us?" He shouted so loudly that I thought even the people on the other side of Pinecrest Valley would hear. His voice came out full of worry and anger. It seemed that he wasn't believing what he was hearing. I had never stopped to think about how crazy this whole story sounded, but seeing Wesley Whitfield's face, it dawned on me that it was really crazy. He continued, "Why didn't you call me, Dad? I'm your son. I could have helped, arranged a lawyer who knows what he's doing." He spoke in a tone that seemed more like a scolding from father to son. Look, I stood there hanging my head, feeling each word weigh like lead. I was more lost than a blind man in a shooting, looking from me to Wesley Whitfield without knowing what to say. I don't think it ever occurred to her that the old man here could get into such a mess. When Wesley Whitfield paused to take a breath, I raised my head and went straight to the point. "Son, you are educated. You understand these things better than I do. Tell me what I do to be able to stay with these children." He looked at me for a long time, then let out a deep sigh and asked if I was really sure. "You really want to take care of a boy you've never seen in your life?" And I answered right away, "Of course I want, because deep down it wasn't just wanting, it was necessary. I knew that if I let them take Archer Haynes away, Willow Haynes would be devastated for good." Wesley Whitfield was quiet for a while, thinking, then gave a half-smile of those that we don't know if it's to laugh or cry. "Okay, Dad, but let's do this. First let's eat. With an empty belly, I can't even think straight." I felt such a great relief that even the food seemed tastier. We all sat at the table, and the conversation changed. Suddenly, everyone was talking about the things of everyday life, as if all that weight had disappeared into the air. Wesley Whitfield started talking about his work. He spoke quickly, gesturing with the spoon in his hand, almost spilling the food. Naomi Whitfield, with that way of a mother who is always watching everything, spoke about how difficult it was to take care of the children alone. And the children, my God, Piper Whitfield, that girl had more stories to tell than a library book. She spoke about school, about friends, about teachers. She told about one time that she and her best friend exchanged salt for sugar in the school kitchen. She laughed so much, remembering the face of the cook, that she almost choked on the rice. Willow Haynes, poor thing, kept looking at Piper Whitfield with a face of astonishment. You could see that she was thinking, "This girl talks more than the snake charmer." But there was a sparkle in her eyes as if she was discovering a new world. Milo Whitfield also didn't stay behind. He spoke about soccer, about video games, even about a girl at school that he thought was pretty. He turned all red when he told, but didn't stop talking. There was so much conversation, so much laughter, that for a moment I forgot all the problems. There at that table, with a full belly and a warm heart, it seemed that the world outside had stopped just so we could enjoy that moment. It was as if we had gone back in time to the good old days when the whole family got together, and the biggest problem was deciding who was going to do the dishes afterward. And it wasn't that in the middle of all that conversation, Naomi Whitfield remembered something important. Piper Whitfield's and Milo Whitfield's birthdays are coming up. Hank Whitfield, then Wesley Whitfield completed. As the two have birthdays close to each other, we always make a little party just for the two. You know how it is. It saves money, and the children love it. Piper Whitfield, all excited, started jumping on the chair. "Grandpa, I'm going to be 10 years old on September 15th. And Milo Whitfield, not wanting to stay behind, added, "And I'm going to be 6 years old on September 22nd. Naomi Whitfield looked at me and Willow Haynes with that way of a mother who is planning something. "We would really like the two of you to come. Nothing too big. Just the family and some friends of the children." Wesley Whitfield, with that way of his to want to resolve everything, already said, "And you don't even need to worry about a gift, Dad. The important thing is for you to go. It will be good for Willow Haynes to play with the other children." But I thought, of course, I'm going to give my grandchildren gifts. With my retirement, it was little, but food never ran out on the table, and I always saved what was left. The children were all excited with the idea. I looked at Willow Haynes and saw that she had shiny eyes. I don't think she had ever been invited to a party. She looked at me as if asking for permission, and I nodded yes. The smile that she gave, that was worth everything. After lunch, Naomi Whitfield, all helpful as always, made a point of washing the dishes. The woman didn't stop still for a minute. The children, with a full and heavy belly, decided to watch television. I stayed at the table with Wesley Whitfield. He started talking in a serious way, adjusting his glasses as he did when he wanted to say something important. Naomi Whitfield listened to the conversation. "Dad, getting to know Willow Haynes better, I understand why you became attached to her. The girl is a sweet, too simple. It doesn't even seem that she came from a family of rich people." I just nodded, thinking that he was right. Who looked at Willow Haynes now would never imagine the sad story that she carried. And then Wesley Whitfield changed the tone. He got more firm, said that things couldn't stay the way they were, that her situation had to be resolved in the right way. Then he told that he was going to talk with a lawyer on Monday, one of those specialists in child custody and adoption. He was going to see what were my chances, if there was a way to do everything legally without that someone came to tear the girl from here, from me. That conversation left me with a lump in my stomach, because until then I was trying to hold on alone. But suddenly, Wesley Whitfield, my son, that I hadn't seen in so long, was there by my side, willing to help. He said that he was going to schedule a conversation with the lawyer, and that he would call me as soon as he had an answer. The days that followed were a true agony. I barely managed to close my eyes at night with so much worry. Wesley Whitfield talked with his lawyer, Mr. Joaquin Vega, a man that he said was trustworthy and used to deal with complicated cases like ours. By the end of the week, Wesley Whitfield appeared at home with a somewhat serious look, but you could see that he had a hint of hope. He sat with me on the porch, and he was telling me slowly what Mr. Joaquin Vega said. The lawyer said that there was a way, yes, but that it wouldn't be easy. He explained that everything was going to go through a hearing where I was going to have to prepare well and show the judge that I was the best choice to take care of Willow Haynes and Archer Haynes. And that hearing was already scheduled for the following week. I would have to prove before a bunch of people that I could give a worthy life to children that I barely knew. While he was talking, I felt a weight in my chest, but at the same time a breath of hope. Wesley Whitfield continued saying that the lawyer had experience with complicated cases, and that he was going to do his best to help us. We agreed to meet in the city on Friday to discuss the details before the hearing. My son was a mainstay. I was proud of him. That same afternoon, while I was still trying to process everything, I heard a car stopping at my gate. When I went outside to see, I was faced with a luxury black car, one of those that you only see important people driving, and before I could say anything, I saw the car door opening and Willow Haynes running out, shouting a name that I had never heard, Griffin Thornton. She threw herself into the arms of a tall man with gray hair, with an elegant way. I stood there not understanding anything, with a knot of jealousy in my chest. What if she decided to leave with him? I thought. I just stood there watching without knowing what to do, but after a tight hug and some words exchanged between them that I didn't hear right, the fellow Griffin Thornton raised his eyes to me and introduced himself with an education that surprised me. My name is Griffin Thornton, a friend of Willow Haynes's family. He wasn't just any stranger. I invited him to come in more out of duty than out of desire. I called him to sit in the kitchen, and there the three of us stayed, drinking fresh brewed Vermont maple coffee that I had made earlier. He started to tell the story, said that he was a friend of her parents, that he knew Sterling and Bridget Haynes since college. When he spoke about the two, the sadness on his face was genuine. He told that he was out of the country on the day of the accident, working in the United States, and that when he learned of the tragedy, he came back running. But then he said that when he went to Harmony House to see how the children were, he only found Archer Haynes. Willow Haynes had already fled. He said that he looked for the girl for months, knocked on every door he knew, and now, after so long, she had appeared. She was there with me hidden at my homestead. I stood there just listening and trying to digest everything that he was saying, with my head spinning. On one hand, I felt relieved to see that he only wanted what was best for the girl, but on the other, the fear that he would take her from me didn't let me breathe right. But Griffin Thornton, contrary to what I thought, didn't give the least hint of wanting to take her from here. He said that he came actually to thank me for having taken care of her all this time, and that now, knowing that the girl was safe, he could sleep peacefully again. He said that he had noticed the way that Willow Haynes looked at me, full of affection, that I was like a grandfather to her. Then he took a deep breath and said that even being a friend of the family and liking her very much, he couldn't stay with the girl and her brother Archer Haynes. He said that he was working too much, traveling up and down, and that the life that he led wasn't something for children. They were long, tiring trips, a coming and going of airplanes and hotels, and they couldn't follow him. Also, he didn't want the boys to give up their studies and be moving all the time. It was then that I felt my chest loosen a little. He wasn't a rival, as I feared. He wasn't there to take her from me. He only wanted to be sure that the girl was in the right place. And it seemed to him that in his eyes I was that place. Willow Haynes, who had been quiet all this time, then raised her head and asked about Archer Haynes. When she spoke about the boy, I saw the sparkle of longing in her gaze. Griffin Thornton gave a long sigh and said that the boy was sad since his sister disappeared. He got even quieter and more withdrawn, as if he expected her to come back at any moment. It was then that he looked at me and said that if I wanted, he could help to organize a visit for them to see each other. He had barely finished speaking, and Willow Haynes already jumped with joy, almost shouting that she wanted to see her little brother. Griffin Thornton appeared again the next day. This time, Willow Haynes, he and I went together in the luxury car. It was a car that looked more like those fancy airplanes that we see on television. I had never entered in something like that, but I knew it from seeing on TV programs. It had a button for everything: flashing lights, leather seats. I settled in the seat, somewhat embarrassed, trying to disguise the discomfort. But there was no way. It was too pretty for an old country bumpkin like me. Arriving there, I already saw that the situation wasn't good. The place looked more like an abandoned house than a children's center. A mess of boys of all ages running and shouting. It seemed that nobody took care right. I felt with my heart tight just to see all that chaos. But it wasn't the time to complain. We had an objective. Soon we were taken to a separate room, somewhat stuffy, where they told us to wait. Willow was gnawing at her nails to the knuckles. I had never seen the girl so anxious. She was touching her hands, tapping her feet on the ground. It was evident that the nervousness was eating her inside. It was then that the door opened, and Archer Haynes entered, a skinny little boy with messy hair, and when the two saw each other, that was to break the heart. Willow Haynes ran in his direction. Archer Haynes didn't think twice, and threw himself into her arms. They clung as if there was no tomorrow. That was to give goosebumps. I stood there with a lump in my throat and my eyes watering. I even cried without shame of admitting, because when the crying comes, there's no use in holding it. It passes over us like a flood. Even if I didn't want to, the damned came, and I wasn't the only one. I looked to the side, and Griffin Thornton was there with red eyes and sniffing softly. He just shook his head and said that it was a situation too sad to see the two little ones like that separated, suffering without needing to. After a while, Willow Haynes, all proud, held Archer Haynes's hand and brought him to introduce to me. She looked at me with shiny eyes and said that that was her little brother, Archer Haynes, that she always talked about. The boy looked at me timid with those big watery eyes and suddenly came running in my direction. He grabbed me by the waist and gave me a hug that I'll never forget, a tight hug of those that we feel even in the soul. My God, I felt my legs weak and a warmth rising through my chest. There, a grumpy and stubborn old man, holding that little boy that I had never seen, but that somehow it seemed that was already mine. I didn't know if I was going to be able to handle, because in that moment, I understood that it wasn't just Willow Haynes that I wanted to protect. Archer Haynes also had already won a place in my heart. I stood there, gently stroking his hair, trying to control my emotions while they talked and laughed, as if the time they had been separated never existed. It was a cry fest, only in the time to say goodbye. Willow Haynes clung in him, and I hardly managed to separate the two. I promised with my heart tight that I was going to do everything to take him home for us to be able to live all together without that story of Harmony House of separation. He stayed there with his eyes full of hope, as who believes that what I was saying was going to become truth, and that only gave me more strength to face what was coming. It didn't take long, and the day of the hearing arrived. I was a wreck. I spent the entire night turning over in bed without managing to close my eyes, with my head full of bad thoughts, imagining how everything could go wrong. I went with Wesley Whitfield. When I entered that room full of people in neckties, I felt smaller than a grain of sand. It was lawyer on one side, relative on the other, judge in the middle, everything so formal, and me there with the face of who didn't know if stayed or came out, running right there. I saw that I was right, since the beginning wasn't just for the custody of the children. Not that bunch of relative, that band of lawyers, all that there was because of the money that their parents left. The vultures were all watching the money, only waiting a chance to put the hand in what wasn't theirs, and Griffin Thornton also was there. The motive was that he had been trustee of the goods of Willow Haynes and Archer Haynes. This means that it was him who was going to take care of everything, the money, the properties, and the incomes, until the children completed 18 years of age and could decide what to do with what was theirs. But this didn't mean that he could spend however he pleased. No, on the contrary. Griffin Thornton had the obligation to use only what was necessary for the well-being of the two children, such as school, food, and everything more or less essential, not a centime more. and each expense would have to be justified to the judge with paper receipts and everything else to avoid some of those relatives who'd appeared at the last hour from claiming that he was putting his hand in the children's money. At least in the middle of that lot of profiting people, there was someone decent looking out for them. But I wasn't naive. I knew that behind the pretty words and the forced smiles, the majority there only wanted one thing: what the parents of Willow Haynes and Archer Haynes had left. They weren't worried about the future of the boys, but about what they could wrench from the inheritance. I saw the way they whispered in corners, exchanging glares of interest. It was as if vultures were circling carrion, but while Griffin Thornton stayed as trustee, they were going to have to swallow their greed and wait. The judge made it very clear that Griffin Thornton's role was to protect the heritage of the little ones, but what was important for me was something else. What I really wanted was the custody of them. I wanted to take Willow Haynes, and if God helped me, Archer Haynes as well, to live with me there in the homestead. That was my true battle, and I knew that it wasn't going to be easy to win. When the judge spoke about all that, I felt a relief because at least I knew that I had someone reliable on my side. Griffin Thornton wasn't there to dispute the custody. He had to guarantee that the heritage was well cared for. The judge explained that the money would be used only for the children's benefit, for their education, health, and everything they needed while growing up. Even after they turned 18, if Griffin Thornton found they weren't prepared to handle such responsibility, he could petition the court to continue managing their assets until they were truly ready. In the end, it was a question of protecting the future of the children, and I felt less weight on my back. Then each of them getting up one for time, speaking of a pretty way that more seemed speech of politician hard words, saying everything that we're going to make for the children only lacked offer the son. I understand that I can't generalize about people, but I always found it better to prevent than remedy. Then came your lawyer, making points to enforce the qualities and trying to show that they were the better choice to take care of the children. Each pulled the sardine for its side, and when it was my time, I was already with the stomach turned round. But there went I, of head raised to tell my part. I spoke everything as Willow Haynes appeared, what we passed together, and as that finish, Mr. Joaquin Vega, the lawyer that Eduardo was arranged to me, got up to defend me, started saying that I was widow, that lived alone, but that I had a homestead, very well care with a property of land, good, a woodshed, spacious, chicken scratching, and everything that a decent countryside house needs. He said that I had everything to be a good grandfather. When I heard that, I felt a press strong in the chest. As a not-well tie, I loved my grandchildren. This is true. But I also knew that I was a grandfather absent for many years. I step away of them. I closing in my small world after Elaine Whitfield was going, and only now then that I went to perceive the damage that this make looked for Wesley Whitfield of the side, and I was without grace because for more that I was fighting now to give a life good to Willow Haynes and to Archer Haynes, the truth is that I didn't attend, as should this hurt, and even thought that I wasn't worthy to be there. The social assistant, Autumn Calloway, was called to speak also, and when she started, I was already with the heart in my mouth. She said that she knew me well, that she had accompanied closely the way as I care of Willow Haynes, since she appeared counted that the girl was very traumatized, hurt for inside, for count of everything that passed after the parents die, and that she fled of Harmony House said that I, with my way half clumsy, managed to win your trust, I helping your little by little, showing that she could feel safely with me. Said that Willow Haynes changed a lot since then, that she started to smile again, to have a little of joy in the life in that moment. I felt a warm in the chest. It was as for the first time someone had seen what I really wanted to give, her a home of truth. Then the judge sent for Willow Haynes to come in. When she came in, the room seemed so small in that place, full of big people all stayed in silence as if stopped the breath, and then came the question that I feared most, where she wanted to stay. The judge asked with a way calm, almost as if was speaking with a porcelain doll, and she skinny breathed, the bottom closed the eyes for a second and answered with a firmness that even make me bristle. Said that wanted to stay with me. That there in the homestead she felt safely. That was the only place where she could be herself. The silence that followed was of cut the air. I only could look for my girl, my little, that had a courage that I never saw in anyone. The judge stayed, stopped looking for her, then for me, and finally for the relatives, as if was trying to understand, and me. I only wanted run until her embrace, say that she didn't need to pass for this. That was all well, but there all in whisper, low talks, glares, distrust, I saw in the faces them. The incredulity must have thought, who is that old, that appeared now wanting to take care of her, hardly knows Archer Haynes, and already wants to take the two poor. It has no chance any. Willow Haynes left, and soon after, they brought the little Archer Haynes. Ah, the heart old almost jumped for the mouth, so small with those eyes round, looking for all sides, and when asked where he wanted stay, he only said a thing, where your sister be said that he liked me, that he trusted in me. There nobody had more what talk. I was already all smooth, without force, in the legs trying to understand if that was. Same real the judge asked for an interval, and everybody went out of the room. I stayed there, stopped that same stick feeling, the legs smooth, the people went out to take a air, to smoke a cigarette, who knows, but I couldn't move. I stayed there, sat in that hard chair looking for the anything and thinking of everything. Mr. Joaquin Vega said that we were going. Well, that the judge took in a lot consideration, what the children wanted. Those minutes seemed like an entire life. The judge returned to the room, your face serious and composed. He adjusted the toga, and looked for all the presents before starting to speak with voice firm and clear. After careful consideration of all the facts and evidences presented, I came to a final decision. In this case, firstly, relation to the heritage issue, as already had certain in our session. Previous. I keep my final decision in this case. I reiterate that Mr. Griffin Thornton will be the trustee of the goods of the children, Willow Haynes and Archer Haynes as already established. He will continue responsible for the administration of the heritage left for the parents, including all the properties and financial resources until both the children make the legal age. This decision stays unalterable and in full force. How much to the custody of the children? That is the central point of this process. My decision is the following. Considering the well-being emotional of the children and the importance of keep the brothers unite, I certain that both Willow Haynes, how much Archer Haynes will stay under the custody of Mr. Hank Whitfield. This decision is not provisional. Neither is object, is a final decision and executory. As since this moment, Mr. Hank Whitfield will have to provide adequate conditions for the well-being and education of both the children will be realized. Periodic visits of social assistants to follow the adaptation and the development of the children in your new home. The judge adjusted the glasses and looked directly for me. Hank Whitfield, I took this decision thinking in what is better for the children. They need a home stable, and it's important that they stay together. You seem to be the right person to give this to them. Finally, I determined that the transition of the children to Hank Whitfield's house to be made from immediate form, but careful to minimize any additional trauma. Mr. Hank Whitfield is authorized to take Archer Haynes as soon as this session is over. This is the decision of the court. The session is over. The judge hit the hammer, sealing the decision of form definitive and unambiguous. As soon as the judge finished speaking, it was as if a wave of deception took account of the room. Wesley Whitfield, that was sat of my side, jumped of the chair in a moment. He embraced me strong. Almost take me the breath. We managed. Dad, we managed, he kept repeating. He was very thrilled. Mr. Joaquin Vega, that was always so serious and composed, now smiled openly. He drew near us, tightened my hand with force, and said, Hank Whitfield, you not makes idea of how important is this victory for the children? Then he and Wesley Whitfield congratulated, exchanging taps in the backs. The two came to conversation excitedly, making plans to help in the adaptation of the children. Debating the next legal steps, was evident how much them were commit with the well-being of Willow Haynes, and of Archer Haynes, and me. Well, I was in other planets, silly, too much to talk anything, only could stay there observing everything with a knot in the throat and the heart full of gratitude. Finally, after so much fight, us would be able to be a family of truth, joined and happy. When us come out of the room, Willow Haynes and Archer Haynes were there, out waiting. As since see me, the two came running. Willow Haynes in the front, pulling the little brother for the hand. She embraced me, shouting, Grandpa, and Archer Haynes, same, being more timid, hugged me with strength, stayed there, embraced with the two at the same time, feeling the heart almost explode. They already called me of grandfather, as if the U.S. was same family of blood. In that time I perceived that for they, the us, already was family of truth. Wesley Whitfield approached and spoke. That was better, us go for your house. Naomi Whitfield was making a supper special to celebrate, in the way for the car. I didn't release my hand, and Archer Haynes would held in the other. Seemed that they had fear that someone was going to appear and take they away again. When us enter in the car, I went in the front with Wesley Whitfield, and the two little behind was there. That happened a thing that I'll never forget. Willow Haynes, that girl that before badly spoke, started to chatter without stop. She counted for Archer. Haynes on the homestead spoke of the chicken, of the rivulet, of the vegetable garden. Archer Haynes has a balance there that the grandpa makes for me. He's going to make one for you also. Right, Grandpa? She spoke, looking for me, for the rear mirror with those eyes shine of joy. The Archer, Haynes, poor only balanced the head. The eyes opened of so much information, but was evident that he was happy to give. Has a smile in the mouth that didn't came out of neither way, and didn't stop by there. Willow Haynes started speaking of the sons of Wesley Whitfield, as if were cousins of them. Archer Haynes, the U.S. goes be able to play with Piper. Whitfield and Milo. Whitfield, them are our cousins now, I, and Wesley Whitfield. Us looked and didn't hold U.S. Starting to laugh silently, balancing the head, in a moment when the conversation there behind was more excited. I put the hand in the leg of my son. He was concentrating on the road, but I saw that your eyes were half watery. God will bless you, my son. I spoke with the voice firm. God bless you for everything that you make. You are an extraordinary man. Wesley Whitfield must have pulled your mother, Helena. I made a pause, feeling a knot in the throat. I am certain that Elaine would be happy if she could see us in this moment, I said with a firm voice. Wesley swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He turned to me for a second with a thrilled smile. Thanks, Dad, he said, his voice slightly tremulous. Mom would be proud of you, too. Us kept in silence for a time, only hearing the laughter of the children in the bank of back. Was as if Helena was there with us, blessing our family reunited that night. Stayed recorded in our life for me, was a thing beautiful of be seen, saw my 4 grandchildren giving. So well as if always had been a family. And the legal one was the coincidence of the ages, them was so close, the Willow Haynes and the Archer Haynes, to enter in tune. In a moment ran by the house, laughed, played was a joy only. But who know, as is always, has that tip of sadness. Only a thing lacked for. I be of truth know as going my son Pedro. God of the sky, how can he has disappeared? Same without leave track people, until commented on he during the supper, Wesley Whitfield spoke that had tried to look for, but without success. Naomi Whitfield suggested, contract a detective particular, but the U.S. didn't know neither for where start. When already was night, Wesley Whitfield took us for house. Hardly the U.S. puts the foot outside of the car, and whom was there? Gladys Pemberton, that fofoquera of Planteau. She stayed with a face of whom had seen the shadow, when saw the U.S. 3 together, Hank Whitfield. She spoke, almost running in our direction. What is that is happening? From where came out that boy? I breathed the bottom, already irritated, knew that before the rooster sing the neighborhood whole already would know the history. Everything she pretending being awkward? I wanted asking for disculpas, no for has called the gentleman of well know it well of Criminosa. I hurried, spoke without think. Everything well. Gladys Pemberton. I spoke without hide. My irritate. Mrs. You need is care more of your life. What is making to that now? In the street could not has expected, until tomorrow no. Although same. Started counting what had happened to the audience to the decision of the judge that Archer Haynes was brother, less of the Willow Haynes. The two now was officially my responsibility to each thing that I spoke. Your eyes was getting more opened. When finished thought that she was going, show a pin of shame, but doesn't know what she said. I knew I always said that the gentleman hid a chest of the treasure in that woodshed, and looks only that treasure the gentleman found. I stayed astonished. She was looking to the children, as if were some kind of prize or investment. Gladys Pemberton. I spoke feeling the blood to boil. These children. Not are neither treasure, the Mrs. Stay coveting, are my grandchildren now, and I go to take care of them. She still had the cheek to say, but Mr. Hank Whitfield think well with your done in the life in that hour. I lost the patience of time, make the favor of go for your house and stop of put the nose, where is not called. I took the children for the hand and entered in house, slamming the door in your face. Heard she mumbling thereout, but not linked with nothing. In the second day that the children were with me, whom is that appears, the social assistant formal saying that wanted to combine, as I going to be the routine of the children from there for a head, the U.S. sitting in the veranda, and he started to speak of money school. These things stayed right, that the Willow Haynes and the Archer Haynes was going study in a private school, there in the city, but there happened a thing that made me to stay of chin. Fell the children in the biggest face of stone, as who does not want anything asked for the Griffin. Thornton to pay school for the cousins, also for the sons of Wesley Whitfield, and know what he makes said that everything. Well, no problem any. I stayed thinking. If I had listened correct, only a monthly payment of that school was more than my retirement. Everything. How the homestead is half far. He spoke that was going to contract a van school to take and bring the children. All the days said. Also that was going to send a money all the month for my account, for make the shopping of the month, gas buying clothes, uniform of the school. These things when he spoke the value almost, I fell to back was much money. The Griffin Thornton explained that as he travel much to work didn't going be able to stay, always for clothes but guarantee that to the less. One time for month he would come to the city to present the documents for the judge show that is all right with the finance of the children. Stayed there listening. Everything half dizzy with so much information was much changed of a time alone. But I look for the children, saw them all, excited with the idea of the new school, and I think I'm destroyed for give count of everything this. When linked for Wesley Whitfield to count the news, thought that the telephone would explode of so much noise. Was he and Naomi Whitfield shouting of joy, as if had win in the lottery. Know that chic school that the children was going study because well was the golden dream of them for the sons, but neither selling the soul for the capita. The U.S. would be able to pay. And now, in a move of magic, the sons of them also was going to study there. I stayed with the heart warm of see so much happiness the time was passing. And soon arrived the birthday of Piper Whitfield and Milo Whitfield, more a day that stayed for the history. How the party seemed thing of rich people, the party was simple, same, but that made me to stay with the chin fell was the presence that the Willow Haynes and the Archer Haynes wanted. Give for the cousins, for Piper Whitfield, a small house of dolls that was bigger that my chicken coop, all of wood in the back, all furnished, thought already, and for Milo Whitfield a bicycle that had more gear change than car of race. The eyes of those children shined so much that gave to illuminate the entire street the life was taking a new rhythm. The children came and back of the school in that van, chic always with 1,000 histories for count. I stayed in the homestead, taking care of my plants and beasts, counting the hours for they return with the lunch. Ready. Was funny. See how the Willow Haynes and the Archer Haynes mixed the things of the chic school with the life in the homestead one day. I caught they trying teach English for the chicken laughed so much that almost I made urine in the pants, but no as is the life right. Always has a cloud dark waiting for rain in our vegetable garden after 8 months. In that life good happened. A thing that left me with the heart in the hand was, In an afternoon of Saturday, I saved all my retirement, accumulating penny for pay. A detective that looked for my son Pedro, that from more of 10 years had disappeared in the world. I made everything in secret. My objective was surprise. The family with the news. The heart of father not gave quiet. This was a thing that I couldn't simply pretend that not was happening in my life. Always with that sensation of that one day he would appear in the door of house smiling. The detective took some months, but when he returned with the news, I felt the ground to disappear below of my feet. My Pedro, my firstborn, had departed of this world, has 4 years. The detective was clear and direct. Pedro got involved with a moneylender, no for its cruelty. The debts was accumulating, arriving a point without turn, when he couldn't pay any more. The moneylender charged with the same life of my son. The detective had evidences, concrete registries of menace, witnesses that saw Pedro with the moneylender, and until a police report shelved on the case that in the time was give as settlement of accounts of the underworld, the coldness of the facts only made everything more painful. Not had doubts, not had hope of a deception. My son had died of form, violent alone, probably with fear and regret, that certainty, weigh as lead in my chest. When counted for, Wesley. Whitfield saw my son to crumble. He fell, sat in the chair with the hands tremble. "Dad," he said, with the voice. "Stop. I always thought that one day the U.S. was going to find he alive. The U.S. too cry. There embraced the family. Whole stayed destroyed." Naomi Whitfield. Poor didn't know what to make. For console us the children. Same without understand, right? Stayed quiet. Tiny feeling the weight of the sadness in the air. Willow Haynes drew near me one day and said, "Grandpa, not stay sad. The Uncle Pedro, now right is looking the use there of the sky he went, make companion for the Granny Helena. That break me for inside. But the worst still was for coming. I had to go look. The rest, mortal of my son." The detective discovered that he was buried as indigent in a city, well far of House I and Wesley Whitfield. The U.S. went together was the travel most long and sad of our lives. Arrived in that city, unfamiliar already in the cemetery, that feeling was. That I don't know, neither explain me tear the chest when made me delivery that box with the bones of my Pedro. I cry that same child there stayed everything that over from my boy. I returned house and organized a bury, small only for family. Bury my Pedro at the side of your mother. Helena Wesley Whitfield stayed of my side all the time after the bury. He embraced me strong and said, "Dad, the Pedro is in peace now, and the U.S. needs follow in front for the children was difficult. See, but with the steps, the U.S. was learning to live with the pain, to carry it. And every time that I look for the sky starry, I think of my Pedro in the Helena, and thank for even has so much people for love here below. That's is the time was passing, and the children was growing whom would say that that neighborhood that before looked me warp, now worship the boys. I even was more sociable, but not give a lot rope. Not that people like give opinion too much in the life of the others. The years was passing, and the U.S. was catching the way of that new life. The children went for school, came back with a bunch of lesson for make. I stayed there helping as could, was difficult. See that business of math. Modern Cruz Credo had one time think that the Willow Haynes was with around 14 years. She arrived of the school, whole cry Tiny had turned miss, linked for Naomi. Whitfield asking for rescue, she took care of this. Archer Haynes took a little more for find in the start, was quiet in yours, but then discovered the soccer, my God, turned a passion whole end of week had game. I went assist. Well, stayed there in the grandstand, whole proud, seeing my grandson running behind the ball. The children was studying, if forming Willow Haynes always was studying too much. Had high grades. The professors worship her already. The Archer. Haynes was more of the exacts, lived dismounting the things here in house for. See how operated, lost the counts of as much watches and radio old. He opened. And look where we are now, in February of 2025. Archer Haynes just turned 18 and gained access to his part of the inheritance, stayed with fear no thought, that he was going to want leave for there, but not as living here with me, and neither speaks in leave. He goes, remove the driving license, said that wants take me for all side. Willow Haynes has formed in the college girl. That proud she did administration, said that wanted understand better how to take care of the businesses of your family and of the projects social of your in the day of the formatting. I cry that same baby. She climb in the stage, took the diploma, and when went make the speech dedicated everything to me, said that if not was for the old, here she not, would has arrived where arrived. You think that I bear. Cry more already since 4 years, that is managing everything joined with Griffin Thornton. In the start, she stayed insecure, thought that not was going to give count, but she has all a support and was catching the way. Nowadays, takes count of everything better, that very employer, for there and the best. Does not forget of the roots of yours always thinking in how may help more people. Oh, and speaking in Griffin. Thornton, in one of these travels of he ended, falling for a gringa. There Naomi Whitfield. The name, she, one Italiana, beautiful of hair, black and eyes greens girl, fine millionaire. Same he, when announced the wedding and make us invitation, thought there go us for that adventure. The wedding was a thing of mad never see. That much luxury in my life was in a villa, old in Tuscany, of these that the U.S. only see in film, I that never had go out. Neither of the state, if saw fly for the other side of the world. Almost died of fear of the plane see past. The travel whole praying silently. All us went until Wesley Whitfield, with Naomi Whitfield, and the cousins, that not be separate for anything arrived there some days before for know the place. God, that beauty, the streets of stone, those constructions old, the smell of food, good in the air, stayed thinking, if not was dreaming. In the day of the wedding, seemed, that had arrived, the royalty cars chic for all side people. Important. That only she arrived in a carriage. Believes that was pretty. That same Princess Griffin Thornton, not fitted in itself of so happy. The ceremony was in a church that had more of 500 years stayed with fear. Until of breathe there inside of. So pretty. That was everything. Then had the party. My God. That business chic. Had food that I neither knew, that existed. Tried some things, tasty, others, neither time. But the wine, that was too good. Dance until see me pulled for the track, and I went half without grace, but stayed for there almost a month. Whole. The holidays of the school I and the 4 children already. Wesley Whitfield and Naomi Whitfield needed return for Brazil. Due to the compromises, I left the homestead to the cares of the Dona Odete neighbor, cherished pay for your feed the beasts. Griffin Thornton make us stay in the mansion of he, and a week after that he returned of the honeymoon in Paris. He make point of show everything for us. The US went for Rome, Venice, until for the beach. Us went, I that never had seen the sea, if saw swimming in the waters, blue of the Mediterranean, whom would say is for chuckle not right. When came back for Brazil, seemed that the U.S. had lived a dream, but not took long, and came the news Griffin Thornton and Naomi Whitfield was going. Has a baby then. In blink of eyes already was 2. The Lorenzo and the Valentina. Some Italianos. Beautiful, see, but with the birth of the children. He resolved live there in the Italy. Same was there that the things changed a little. Griffin Thornton not could more come all the month as before. But he not left the kite come down, not arranged everything right for Willow Haynes, touched the boat for here, left people of reliable for help. She taught everything that, no sometimes. Even I catch me thinking in that, travel. I, a old country bumpkin walking for those cities, old seeing things that I didn't. Same imagine that existed. The life is funny, right? The us never knows where is going stop. But a thing I learned, not import where the US is. The important is have the family for close, and family, thank God, is what does not lack to me. Willow has a heart too big for her chest. She completely transformed the Harmony House where she and her brother once stayed, renovating the facilities, hiring more staff, creating psychological support programs, tutoring classes, and even vocational courses for the older children. She didn't stop there either. She's established similar programs at several other homes since then. She is occupy same in care of these children that not has nobody. And Archer Haynes always goes with she helps in that can, but still is half without address. In the life stays between want. Follow the steps of the sister, and ride something of your must-be thing of the age, right? But the important is that he has good heart. Other day, same brought for house a doggy turning. Can that found in the street? Now the Rusty does part of the family, but is not, only he not. With that story of heart yours, the house already is with 5 dogies, and I'm here in my tiny but go tell you the homestead already not is neither the same. No now has of the good and of the best, refrigerator of 2 doors, sofa that seems not. Has end a bed that give for swim and she of so big is a comfort only. Has had days difficult. Also see not think that was all a sea of roses, only because the U.S. had money. I remember well of that time damned when appeared that virus that well of the COVID-19 was a time of much fear and sadness. The U.S. thought that was protected here in the homestead far of everything. But that darn of the virus not choose direction, no took all the world here in house Willow Haynes and Archer Haynes young. Then that passed half bad, but soon, if recovered, I give a fright in all the world. Stayed intern no thought that was going fine with my Helena. More early, that expected. But thank for God the use came out of this. Without sequels. Now, what made me sad of truth was what happened with the Gladys Pemberton, that fofoquera of Planton. Remember, no she not had the same luck that the U.S. the virus take she and took heavy. But before she depart, happened a thing that, not I wish neither for my worst enemy, 2 sons, her Jose and Melody. Pemberton also took the virus, and you believe that the 2 depart before she was to cut the heart. See the Gladys Pemberton already sick, having that say goodbye of the own sons without same could make a berry decent. She not bear little time after she also is gone. I never thought that was going, say this, but felt. Lack of that damned was strange. Look for the street. And not see, she pass always with some new. For count, the villa whole stayed of mourning. Not was for less, no lose 3 people. Of a family only see was a hit for all the world. The people walked for the streets head low. The windows all closed. Seemed that a cloud dark had stay above of the U.S. No I and the Gladys Pemberton. The U.S. Live in the Turris, she with that tongue sharp. I with my way frown, but in the bottom, think that the U.S. liked was a friendship warp of these, that the U.S. only understand the value when loses. After that she is gone, made me various times looking for the gate waiting. See she appear for Fofocar. And with that, my story comes to an end. My voice may be weary now, but my heart is still full as I've had the chance to share this journey with all of you. I want to express my deepest gratitude to everyone who patiently listened to the story of an old man who once carried so much bitterness. Life is strange, isn't it? Sometimes the greatest losses open the doors to the most beautiful things. From a lonely man, closed off after the death of his wife and estranged from his children, I found a reason to live again through 2 orphaned children. And by opening my heart to care for Willow and Archer, I was able to reconnect with my son and rebuild a family. The message I want to leave with you is simple. Don't let pain or pride stop you from seeking happiness. Family doesn't have to be tied by blood. It's where you're loved, accepted, and feel at home. And never believe it's too late to start over, to make things right. or to open your heart to new love. I'd like to give a special thank you to the founder of the Grandparents Memories channel for inviting me here today to share my story. It's a beautiful initiative, preserving the precious memories and life lessons of our generation to pass on to the next. If you found meaning in my story, please consider subscribing to Grandparents Memories so you won't miss more inspiring stories from elders like myself. Every subscription, every like is a great encouragement to keep this mission alive, of sharing and preserving these treasured memories. Once again, thank you for listening. I'm Hank Whitfield, and this was my story, about finding family in the most unexpected place.